Good morning, Daily Huddle family. Welcome back. It is Tuesday morning where we talk all things communication and relationships. I'm Christy Bailey. Tara lets me come on once a month and spend some time with you, so I'm always grateful for that. Look forward to this each month. And I especially look forward to today because I have got a speaker that I am so excited to bring to you. We met a couple of months ago, Nancy Gunter and I, at a conference, and this lady stole the show. Her speech, we both spoke, and her speech, I just thought, I have got to get this woman on here. She was so entertaining, but her topic was so topical and helpful, and it just fits beautifully in with our theme of communication. So let me officially introduce Nancy Gunter. Nancy is the CEO of Gunter Training and specializes in generational consulting, HR consulting, and executive and team coaching. She has a master's degree with an emphasis in generational studies and is a Gallup certified strengths coach, a positive intelligence coach, and a speaker trainer for companies like HUD, Anheuser-Busch, Oklahoma State University, and many more. She enjoys sharing what she's learned after spending 35 years with the YMCA, working from coast to coast. Nancy's also a member of National Speakers Association and presents on many topics related to leadership and self-development. She specializes in speaking on generational dynamics, positive intelligence, and temperaments, why people do what they do. Due to her love of adventure and activity, Nancy has traveled extensively, reaching 5 continents and speaking on 3 of them. And Nancy also enjoys all types of sports and continues to participate in sprint, Olympic, and half Ironman triathlons. She is a busy lady. So Nancy, we are grateful that you have got some time for us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited about being here. This is going to be great.
Good, good. Well, you speak on a topic of generational communication. So tell us a little bit about why you're so interested in this topic and how did you become an expert in the field?
Yeah, so first of all, I hesitate ever to call myself an expert in the generations because everybody is an expert in themselves, and we're all from different generations. However, I've decided that the term specialist is one that I feel better about because I'm like, okay, I do have some specialty knowledge in this. So back probably, I don't know, close to 20 years now, I got my master's degree. And at that time, I was supervising 20-year-olds. I was in my early 40s. I was supervising 20-year-olds, and I was so frustrated. And it was the millennial generation. They were coming into the workplace. I was so frustrated that I just couldn't understand them. And so while I was getting my master's degree, I had to do a thesis, a special project. And so I decided, well, I'm going to figure out how to supervise these generations. So I did 2 years of extensive study on, at that time, the 4 generations in the workplace. Super fascinated by everything that I learned. It made me a better supervisor. I feel like it's made me a better supervisor throughout the rest of my career and allows me to help other people sort of understand the people that they're working with a little bit better. But that's probably the reason that I got so interested in it. And then for the last 20 years, of course, the millennial generation, they're not the kids anymore. And so, they're in the workplace. They're leading a lot of our workplaces now. And then Gen Z came in. And so I've learned all the stuff about Gen Z as well. And now the real babies are Generation Alpha at this point. And so it's just so fascinating to learn all about like all the different generations and what they bring to the workplace. It's different. Every single one of them is so different.
Yeah, it's funny, and I think that was why I was so drawn to your speech and this topic is because I'm experiencing some of that myself, being a proud Gen Xer. I'm in an office with a lot of millennials, and I took over from somebody who had been running the office that was a millennial. And I'm like, I don't even get what's going on here. Like, what planet am I on? And so I find it fascinating too. So I love that there is, your work is out there to really help us. So I'm curious if we're all people, people are people. Why does somebody's generation matter so much, especially when it comes to communication? What makes it matter so much, and why is it so different?
Yeah, so one of the things, so this question is probably one of the questions comes up every single time I work with anybody related to like the generations working together. Almost every work, well, I won't say every workplace, but there's a lot of workplaces out there right now that are struggling with the generations being able to work together. And communication, if there's one thing on any survey that seems to be the problem in every workplace, it's communication. And so then you put generations and communication together, and you've got like a big issue that is occurring in the workplace. One thing that I tell anybody that comes to me talking about this is the number one thing is you've got to understand how people like how our brain developed during our formative years, our teenage years, what was happening in our life, like, and thus like everything that was happening at that time we have carried with us throughout our whole life, and that is basically how we perceive life at this point, how we view things. So I'll just give you an example. So I'm a baby boomer. I'm at the end of the baby boomers. So I'm what's called a cusper because I'm right at the very end of baby boomers, but I'm close enough to Gen X that I can understand Gen X as well. So just using me as an example. So I grew up during a period of time when there were 80 million baby boomers that were going into the workforce. And so as I got my first job, one thing that I learned was I needed to do whatever was necessary to keep the job because there were a lot of other people looking for work. There's just a lot of baby boomers out there that are looking for work. And of course, I'm at the end, so it wasn't quite as dramatic for me as it was for people that were older than me. But so in understanding that I need to do whatever is necessary in order to keep the job, that meant that this idea of the 50-hour work week, which came in with the baby boomer generation, that kind of concept was one that I understood. And even today, as I go into any work environment today, I don't have an issue with 50, 60 hours of work. It's just sort of a normal way of thinking. But that's because of the generation I grew up in. Now, starting with Gen X, with your generation, that was not okay. Like the Gen X generation, the millennial generation, Gen Z, nobody wants to do that 50, 60-hour work week. And again, it's because of like things that happened during the Gen X growing up years about how they see big business and that kind of stuff, and so that's just one example of how each generation is going to view things differently, but how it can create communication issues because you got a baby boomer boss talking to a millennial saying, why aren't you doing whatever is necessary to get the job done? And the millennial is saying, I just work smarter, not harder. And now we've got a misunderstanding. And if you don't understand how the two generations grew up, then you're just going to stay right there. You're not going to have this understanding.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I'm connecting a bunch of dots in my own head right now about how, our own experiences, of course, that shapes the way that we view the world. And that I already got, but it's like, oh, but that view of the world is how we communicate. So, and that's interesting that you say that over and over that is the number one problem that people put, when they're dissatisfied at work is the communication. So
Mhm.
yes, but it connected a bunch of dots for me there together. So thank you.
Yeah. One other thing, if I can just say just a little bit more about sort of each generation,
Yeah, let's
if you
break it down.
Okay. If you look at each generation and so let's look at them just strictly from the greatest invention for each generation. So every generation has a greatest invention. And that greatest invention is based on something that was significant to the generation that became widely accessible to the public during their teenage years, during that generation's teenage years. So every generation has a greatest invention. So if you just look at each generation, what their greatest invention is, and imagine what life was like when that was the greatest invention, then you've got a better understanding of that generation. So the traditionalist generation, this is the oldest one, their greatest invention was the car. Like today, everybody drives a car. That's no great invention. But for that generation, that was their greatest invention.
So
Then,
can I pause you real quick? The traditionalists, that's the generation before the boomers, right? So that's the World War I, World War II. Is that correct?
yes, yeah. Born 1900, born 1900, 1945, that age range. It's a couple of generations. Anyway, there's more to it. But yeah, that oldest generation. That's
Okay.
that group. All right. So then your baby boomer generation, that's people that are around age 61 to about 80, that age group. Their greatest invention was the TV. So again, think about like today, the TV is actually almost being left behind because Gen Z isn't really watching the TV as much as what, baby boomers and any other generation. So, but again, greatest invention. What was life like when that was it? Like we had 3 channels. That was awesome, you know. Then Gen X comes in, and with them comes the personal computer. Greatest invention, but no internet, right? Just the computer. So we just become more efficient. Then the millennials come in. Their greatest invention is now the World Wide Web. So again, you think about Gen Z, well, World Wide Web is no great invention. They've had it their whole life. So this is just, this kind of connectivity is normal to them. But with the millennials, that was a new thing, and that was like a big deal. And then Gen Z, greatest invention is the smartphone. That's right. Everybody's got it somewhere close to them. And so they've had constant accessibility. So you just think about like the car to the smartphone and those two people talking to each other. It's like, okay, yeah, they do not see life the same.
Yeah, that puts things into massive perspective. Yeah. You had mentioned, kind of what goes along with those greatest inventions. Um, let's kind of talk about that work ethic a little bit, and just kind of just our personalities. You mentioned, boomers. It's like you go in and you work hard. Kind of break it down for the way that personalities show up a little bit differently, from the generations. Like what's the difference between, like, say, a Gen Xer and a boomer when it comes to how we show up? Any things that you can kind of help us identify there?
Yeah. So let's just look at it sort of from work ethic. Well, how you might define work ethic. Every generation is going to define work ethic a little bit differently, but for the baby boomer generation, work ethic a lot had to do with butt in the seat, right? So you're there, you're in the office 50, 60 hours a week. There is no, when the baby boomers coming into the workplace, there's not remote work. So that's not an option. I was talking to Fareed about the entrepreneurship. With the baby boomer generation, there's a few entrepreneurs, but this isn't a big, like that. It's just not a big deal for that group. So we've got our big companies, and that's who all the baby boomers go to work for. So you got to do whatever's necessary because there's only so many of those big companies, and we're not starting our own businesses. Then, and there are a few, but it's just not overwhelming. Then you go to Gen X. Gen X sees, like, they've seen a lot of failure. They saw a lot of failure as they were growing up. And one of those was they saw their parents being downsized from big business. So that produced in Gen X this idea that I need to have a lot of potential careers on the horizon because I don't know for sure that I'm going to stay with this one job. And it's not that they're disloyal, it's just they've got a lot of options. And so with that also comes work-life balance. So they're saying, okay, I don't want to be at work all the time. I know what companies can do. I'm not going to do that. So I need to have work-life balance. So they when they're at work, they're at work. When they're at home, they're at home. They don't want the two to match, right? So that's let's keep these two things separate. Then you got the millennial generation. They come in, and of course they've got the computer because that came in with Gen X. They've got the World Wide Web. And so they're saying, you know what? I don't have to be in the office the whole time. if I can take off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and go play a soccer game, that would be awesome. I'll go back home and then I'll do some work from home because I've got the internet, right? So I've got that capability. So I'll do some work from home later in the evening while I'm still up and, energized. And so now they want work-life integration, not really so much balance as it is, let's integrate these two things. So, you
Big,
know, say that again.
that's a big difference between those two. Yeah.
Yeah, big difference. So, Gen X didn't have the internet, right? So when they're at work, they're at work. When they're at home, they're at home, and they don't want those two connected. Millennials, they did want them more connected because they wanted to be able to take off during the day and then work from home in the evening or something, something like that. So there's more integration. Gen Z comes in and they're even more on the integration. Again, they're much more entrepreneurial minded as well. Now, most of the stuff that I talk about has to do with the US, but as the generations are younger, this is becoming more international because of the connectivity between everybody. So we're more connected. And so therefore, a lot of these things are going to, like a lot of things that I'm talking about will impact Gen Z and Alpha, maybe a little bit of millennial. The older generations is more like there's some global events that affect everybody, such as the wars, but with the connectivity that we have, it becomes much more connected, like throughout the nation, throughout the world. So then, anyway, Gen Z comes into the workplace. They want more integration as well, much like millennials. But theirs is taken almost to an extreme. They're like, if I can do it from home or remotely, not really sure I know why I need to be in the office.
At
It's
all.
like, yeah, at all. Exactly. Of course, they grew up during the pandemic. So they learned how to go to school from home. So if I can go to school from home, then I should be able to do just about anything from remote work.
Wow. I mean, that really does put it all into perspective. Just our different experiences, how that colors, our worldview. So knowing now how we're all coming from these very different, situations growing up, how do we take that information now and use it to improve our communication? How do we fix this issue at the workplace where we can have better communication between the generations? What do we do?
Yeah. So uh, the first thing is understand how communication occurs. So you can probably like Google just about anything to say, how does communication occur? What are the steps? For me, I believe it's pretty simple. You have a speaker. So let's say me, I'm sending a message. I'm a boomer generation. So I am going to encode my message with things that make sense to me. I'm going to expect you basically to read my message as if you are me, right? So I'm going to encode the message with words, sentence structure. For me, I'm going to use a period and I'm going to use two spaces after the period, right? So I'm going to use all proper punctuation, capitalization, all of that. I don't have run-on sentences, anything like that. If it's a text message, it might be fairly long, right? So that's me as a boomer. I'm going to encode the message with words that make sense to me. All of that makes sense to me. Then I'm going to choose a channel to send it through. Now, I'm a pretty forward-thinking boomer, so I might choose a text message or an email, right? I'm not going to send it via letter, right? So I'm gonna choose another type of channel, right? So I'm gonna encode the message, then I'm gonna choose channel, and then the receiver is going to decode the message. So let's say you're the receiver, although you're too close in age to me, but let's say a Gen Z is
Right.
the receiver of the message. And so they get the message and they're going to, like, let's say I just sent them a nice lengthy message, got all my questions and everything in it, all the periods, all the capitalization, everything. They're looking at it and they're going to say, wow, like, why is she yelling at me? A period, from what I understand, a period means like emphasis now. So like it emphasizes everything before that. I'm not sure, but it's something along those lines. So for me, that's an exclamation point or all caps. But anyway, so Gen Z looks at what I've sent and they're saying, wow, why is she yelling at me? Why is she asking me so many questions? Like, I do not understand this. So they're decoding my message, but they're decoding it with things that make sense to them. Then, the cycle repeats. So now Gen Z is going to encode a message to me, and they're going to use things that make sense to them, which I'm probably not going to be able to read. It's going to include a lot of emojis and no punctuation whatsoever. And I'm going to be, oh my goodness, I will never forget getting a message from, I had an HR consulting client, and they had a Gen Z employee that they were struggling with, and they wanted me to work with him. And so he was sending me these messages, and literally I would read them and I'd be like, what the heck is he saying? There's like no punctuation in it whatsoever. I can't figure out where one sentence starts and another sentence, like where one stops and the next one starts. There's no capitalization in it. So I'm not even sure what's important and what's not.
Right.
And literally it took a lot of effort to try to figure out, what is he saying? Like, how do I need to respond to this? So anyway, so Gen Z encodes the message, chooses the channel. I decode it, but I'm going to decode it with what makes sense to me. So it's yeah. So that's like, how do the generations impact communication? Pretty much everything about the generation impacts communication. So, like, if there's one thing that you can take from this, it is, when you're getting ready to send a message, think about the receiver. Don't be thinking about yourself. Think
Mm.
about the receiver, and then put the message together based on what the receiver needs to hear. So if I'm
And,
going to send a message, say it again.
and the way they want to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if I'm going to send a message to Gen Z, I'm probably going to be careful with my periods. Maybe I'm like, it's going to be hard for me not to use capitalization and to do a run-on sentence. So, maybe I do extra spaces or something, but, like, figuring out, what does Gen Z need to hear in order for them to get my point, you know?
Mm. You're going to use a lot more emojis.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Become a little more familiar with the emojis. Maybe even choosing a different channel, like, figuring out what is the platform that Gen Z is most connected to. I,
Interesting.
I have some high school kids that I do some different things with, and when I send a text message, it like, I have to almost physically see them to say, hey, I sent you a text message, can you answer it? Because they're not always looking at their text. Now they do from their friends, they don't from a boomer.
Oh, interesting. So, in order to improve communication across the generations, it's about, before you communicate, think about the receiver and the way that they're going to decode your message.
Mhm.
Anything else that you kind of want to leave us with in terms of how do we improve this?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say there's really two things. One is listen. Listen to whatever the other generation is. Really listen to them to try to understand, where are they coming from. Because again, and you go back, you just think about the greatest invention for any generation, you can understand that their perspective is different. And so if we're not listening and genuinely listening to what they are saying, not what we want to hear, but rather, like, really try to listen to where they're coming from. That's number one. And then number two is, when you get ready to send a message or even speak to another generation, be keeping in mind the generation that they are from, so that that communication is a little clearer to them as a receiver. We have a real tendency when we're speaking to expect the other person to think just like us. And we really have to understand that is not going to be the case when you're speaking to a different generation.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I think I need you to give me a little pep talk and a reminder of this, like, every day. So what can a company do, if this communication issue is something that they're facing?
Yeah, so the two things that I mentioned, but I work with companies, all the time. Not only, like, I do a lot of speaking on the generations, where I'll go into a company and I'll do, 1 to 3 hours of work just on awareness of the generations. But then there's other companies where I work longer term with them, where we really create action plans and strategies for engaging the generations better in the way they communicate, and just in the way that they work together in the workplace. There's a lot of different, options, but for every business, it's going to look a little bit different, because sort of depends on what is the struggle that they are having. Like, most of the time, communication is a piece, but quite often there's more things besides that.
Yeah, gotcha. I just shared Nancy's website and her email address if this is something that anybody wants more information on. Um, before we will open it up for questions here, but any last thoughts that you want to share with us, Nancy?
You know, you can tell I find the generations to be super fascinating. And I think everybody would if you take the time to learn about them. Like I always say, whenever I talk about whenever I'm presenting, I always say, if you know somebody in the traditionalist generation, you need to spend some time with them now because their life was so different from everybody else's. And so, like from every other generation, even boomers, such a significant difference. So if you know somebody in that generation, please spend a few minutes with them, learn about their life, because like I hope we don't ever go back to some of the hardships that they had, but life was simpler also at that time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I that's something that I got from hearing you speak is way better appreciation for the generations. There is something unique and cool about all of our generations, and so I think that that's something that you kind of spread is this appreciation and love for the different generations. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you bet. You
Uh,
bet.
Questions out there? Anybody want to throw
I have
some?
a question.
Sarah?
I love this work and I dip my toe in it from time to time as well when I put on workshops, especially for a company that's very it's a manufacturing and they have people that have worked there for decades and then new people and they have this challenge. And my question is, I was listening to you give some suggestions, obviously about listening, but when you started talking about like maybe changing the way you text or using emojis, to me, that almost feels like I'm trying to tell you that I'm not as old as I am. And I guess what I'm thinking is I'd rather communicate, like not try to embrace their language, but understand their mentality and kind of speak to that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, I know there's got to be more than just, don't come over so formal and uptight because I'm a writer and I'm going to be that. And so,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I think it probably would not be a good idea, like for me, to try to figure out how to send a message with emojis, because I'm going to end up with the totally wrong emojis, and they're going to get a message that is not what I intended at all. I think it really stems more to listening and understanding and appreciating. So just like you said, appreciate. So let's think about Gen Z. Appreciate what they are bringing to the conversation, appreciate what they are bringing to the workplace, like really get to know them. Don't just, get mad at them because you feel like they don't have a good work ethic.
Yeah.
Find out what it is that's important to them and figure out like where are they working? Where are they spending their time? Because I guarantee you, like they are doing something that is critically important to them. And if you don't know what it is, you're not going to be able to communicate as well to them. So yeah, I would agree with you. Don't necessarily, just change the way you communicate, but don't expect them to interpret the way you interpret either.
That's powerful. Yes. This is so fascinating. I could talk to you for hours. I'm going to check out their YouTube channel. I'm very excited about that.
Good, good, good.
Well, hey, one more thing. What do you think the Generation Alpha, what their greatest invention will be? I'm feeling AI.
Yeah, that's sort of what I think as well. But we won't know probably for another probably 10 years.
Okay.
So it might depend sort of like what happens with AI over the next 10 years, which all indications are it's just going to go like straight up. But then what else is going to come along? I mean, new technology seems to come along like every 2 years. So who knows what the next thing might be and whether that's going to be the thing or not. Like Generation Alpha is around age 14 right now. So they're in there, like we have just started into the formative years of that generation. So it's still sort of up in the air. I don't know. I think AI, but I don't know right now.
Okay. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on, especially is it early in the morning? Are you in California?
No, I'm in Oklahoma.
Okay, so not
Yeah.
quite as early.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm an early morning person, so it's all good.
Well, go check out Nancy's website. She's going to get her speech that I was saying that I was so enamored with. It'll be up on her website. It's on her YouTube channel. And you'll be so glad you watched it. I'm sure we'll be seeing you on a TED stage soon. It was so good. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I hope everybody got a lot out of that. So we will leave you today with the daily tenets, the daily huddle tenets. Love. Boomers wrote love letters. Gen Z sends heart emojis. Either way, lead with love and courage will follow. Give. Giving is the ultimate life hack. Gen X calls it karma. Gen Z calls it vibing. Just do it. Laugh. Boomers had laugh tracks. Gen X had sarcasm. Gen Z has TikTok. Whatever your flavor, laugh more. Stress less. Gen X hides it. Millennials therapize it. Gen Z memes it. Just don't let it run the show. Eat more plants. Millennials made kale cool. Gen Z made oat milk a thing. Plants equal brain fuel. Move your body. Jazzercise, Zumba, TikTok dances. Everybody, every generation moves. So should you. Get enough sleep. Boomers went to bed at 9. Gen Z is trying. Sleep fixes what caffeine can't. And check yourself before you wreck yourself. Gen X said it best. Still true, still iconic. So I hope you have a great day today. Come back tomorrow. Chase Steele will be here on all things wellness. Have a great day, everybody.
Fantastic. Crush the ending.